1, 2, 3, Well, folks, for the first time this series, I am actually mad as hell. Excuse my language. Because according to our special Election Day blackboard, it's how long till polling day?
Pretty soon, Shaun, pretty soon.
Exactly. Pretty soon. Yeah, people are already voting via a process called pre-polling. Now, isn't that a bit like opening all your Easter eggs on Shrove Tuesday, or celebrating Boxing Day on Christmas Eve, or having the Queen's birthday on the Queen's birthday? And what's worse is, as this Australian Electoral Commission spokesperson reminds us,
perhaps between 30 and 40% of Australians may well vote between now and July the 2nd.
Now, not only will this wreak havoc with the election day sausage sizzle industry, it means that up to 40% of you are voting without having heard everything that our political leaders want to tell you in order for you to make an informed decision when you tick or you cross or you colour in or whatever it is you're supposed to do with those boxes on your ballot sheets. But who are these 40%ers who are ruining it for everyone else? What type of person wouldn't want to wait as long as possible to delay their political gratification as they step into their cardboard orgasmatrons on July 2? Chris Uhlmann. I don't mean he's doing it, I'm just throwing to a clip of him.
Pre-poll is supposed to be a service for those who can't vote on July the 2nd.
Travelling, perhaps going into hospital even, or can't leave their workplace.
But it is open to interpretation.
I'm 92 and I can't climb up the hill to the school on the day.
Really, old woman? What kind of world are we living in, where just because of a little age and infirmity, we can't be arsed climbing up a hill and filling in a couple of forms so that this country can be run properly? Did we fight the wily Pathan in Nam for nothing? Did the rats in Tobruk die on the beaches of Cronulla in vain? And what about all those zombies who gave their lives in World War Z? I'm 92 and can't climb up the hill to the school on the day. I hope there's no one here that's had the gall to lodge their pre-poll vote.
I've already pre-polled my vote.
Well, I think we'd all like to know, sir, what possible reason you would have for spoiling July 2 for the rest of us.
Well, at first I told them I was 92 and I couldn't climb up the hill to the school on the day. But then, during the interrogation by the electoral officers, I broke down and told them the truth. I'm 62 and I'm fed up with this whole election campaign. I'm sick of the rubbish and the spin and the blatant lies and the desperate smears and the conniving and the pork barrelling and week after week of high-vis vests and walks through malls and rats and llamas and beer and pamphlets. I said, I'm frustrated by the lack of serious debate and the constant evasion of questions and the repetitive sloganeering. I said I'm jolly well over the whole thing and I want it to end as soon as possible and I can't stand it for a day longer. And then I burst into tears.
Well, did they buy that?
Buy it? They gave me a standing ovation and 3 extra votes.
And can I ask who you voted for?
Well, I drew a penis and testicles on my House of Reps form. And in the Senate, I voted for Darren Hinch.
Yes, well, thank you, unnamed person. The worrying thing about all this, of course, is the figure 40%, because according to this essential media report from just last week, 40% of voters currently disapprove of Malcolm Turnbull and 40% disapprove of Bill Shorten. And that means about 20% are undecided as to which one they disapprove of. And if these two 40% end up voting for the leader they disapprove of the least, it's that 20% that will decide the outcome of the election. According to the PM, though, when those undecided become undecided, they'll be backing him.
We are confident that Australians will return us to government, but it is their decision.
Yes, it's important to remember that last bit. Not so much a qualification as a regret that the government can't elect themselves, because, let's face it, if they did, the politically correct brigade would be saying, ooh, corrupt dictatorship, and writing letters to what's left of our media, which they couldn't print because they'd be imprisoned. But Mr Turnbull's confidence, as seen here in his younger days, is a welcome change from the usual race for the underdog status that the major parties usually engage in, with each claiming that they're less likely to win than the other. Claims which they generally proceed to support with an endless parade of unelectable candidates unaware of their own policies. Bill Shorten, however, didn't see it that way.
I would never be so arrogant as to say we will win.
Yes, although if Bill said it, it'd be more unhinged self-delusion than arrogance, wouldn't it? But Bill goes on to justify his false modesty on completely different grounds.
And apart from any other reason, the election hasn't been held. The votes haven't been counted.
Yes, Bill's absolutely right. And he's right on top of his game here, as he wasn't back in his early days. But how could Malcolm and his team not have taken this into account? Wouldn't the fact that we're still campaigning have tipped them off? It's a rare misstep for a man who has kept his natural born-to-rule osity chained up in a cellar like a werewolf. And I say that as a friend, even though he invited Waleed to his iftar dinner and not me, because I, as you know, think very, very highly of Mr Turnbull. I mean, equally, I don't mind Mr Shorten that much either. And I even have a soft spot for lovable eccentrics like John Madigan. The problem really is you, the undecided voter, who have either already voted or have just given up listening to our leaders entirely. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that you don't know anything at all or that you mostly know nothing. What I'm saying is that most of you know nothing about everything there is. That's right, I'm talking about a condition that affects most Australians, omnipotence. Now, the parties are doing their level best to tell you what they think you want to hear, but if you're not paying attention anymore, what's the point? What you need to do is to let our leaders know what you want to hear them saying to you. A service we're about to provide in a brand new segment. Okay, so what will happen is that we'll ask you what you think about certain important things in this election, and you can respond in a very real and interactive way while you're half watching the show and double screening.
And then we cut to some idiot on a phone.
Hey, Mum, they're talking about us on the telly.
What? Anyway, hopefully it'll make
Hang on, I'll tweet you. Hashtag whatevs.
The fact of the matter is that it'll be the order on the ballot papers and the order of preferences on the various how to vote cards that'll play the biggest role in who gets elected. For example, in Sydney, the Greens initially preference Ula Falanga, a candidate from Fred Niles' Christian Democratic Party. They preference Ula Falanga, who has protested every gay and lesbian Mardi Gras since 1978 over gay Liberal candidate Geoffrey Winters. Greens spokescolumn Coriander Tuesday, you've now decided to change your mind and preference Mr Winters ahead of Ms Falanga, haven't you?
Yes, we did. Change our minds we must because of the nasty, wicked conclusions that the tricksy media were drawing from our original choosings.
Because switching to Mr Winters and preferencing a Liberal candidate does seem odd given the Libs aren't preferencing you, doesn't it?
Tricksy, nasty Libs did hurt the Greens after we were their friends in the Senators. Mustn't let the Libs have the preference. We want it. We needs it. They stole it from us. Nasty, tricksy, wicked.
Well, why not preference Labor then? Because
Yes. Labor would cheat you, hurt you, lie. Oh, but Labor is my friend. You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you. You're a liar and a thief. No, murderer. Leave now and never come back. We told him to go and away he goes. Preference gone, gone, gone. Greed is free.
Yes, Coriander's right. It is a tricksy issue. And let's not forget the Nationals, who are subject to a preference deal between the Libs and the Labs in the WAs. That's likely to see their candidates lose a few seats. Poor old Nationals. Notice even the "the" in their logo has turned its back on them. One way of sorting out your preference dilemma, of course, is to simply not have any. An elegant solution the Jackie Lambie network will be washing its hands in come election day. This despite the soiled hand of friendship that Labor in Tasmania are offering in preferencing Ms Lambie's party second in the upper house behind the Greens.
We want the preference. Always we is looking for it, and the preference wants to go back to them, but we mustn't let them have it.
Chief of Staff for Jackie Lambie's network, Dolly Norman, aren't you better off coming to some arrangement with Labor, given that, like the Greens, you'd have more in common with them than the coalition?
Oh, Shaun, Jackie does whatever the hell she wants. Yeah. She puts Tassie families, workers, pensioners, farmers, veterans, uni students and diggers first. And she totally, fully expects the other members of the network in the other states to bloody well put the families, workers, pensioners, farmers, veterans, uni students and diggers in their states first too.
Well, it's going to get a bit crowded up there in first position, though, isn't it?
Ban halal!
Now, Jackie recently called Corey Bernardi an a-hole. What does she mean by that?
Asshole.
Thank you. Jackie's also been quite vocal on the subject of political donations.
Shaun, Jackie is very serious about real-time disclosure of political donations. Ban Ki-moon!
And I think we have footage of Jackie being serious about real-time political donations.
Mr Turnbull and Shaun, show us exactly who has given you money and how much before election day. I've shown you mine. Now can you show me yours?
Democracy is so overrated.
Shaun, did you like the music in Jackie's video? Because I brung my axe and I can play you a few hot licks if you like.
No, that's fine. I'm good. Still to come later in the week.
You're doing good work, Swink. To be honest, I didn't think you had it in you.
I've had it in me more than you'll ever know. Pig? He's not so bad. Good coffee, though. What's your secret?
Why, sold my hair to go to barista college. They called it a witch hunt.
Get it out of here.
They were wrong.
You telling me you ain't never killed no one?
My sister died from natural causes when she fell from that building, you bastard!
A tale as curly as it is moving.
The x-rays aren't good. You've got brain fever.
Madam Commissioner, you're on.
Wish me luck.
You won't need it.
No, you're right. Women push their luck. Men risk theirs. Sorry, it's a quote from Oscar Wilde.
Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Sorry, I studied him too at barista college.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Did I leave my purse in here?
Yeah.
Take care of it for me.
I will. Enid Swink, coming soon.
Yeah, well, I don't know why he wasn't at the launch. Maybe he didn't think they were left-wing enough for him. That's why he went to Russia instead. OK, right. Yep, bye. See you, Corey. Now, much of the policy we've been hearing about from the main parties concerns the big city hip pockets on the coastal urban rind of this country. But what about the delectable inland fruit meat of regional Australia's heartland? Who looks after them, if not Barnaby Joyce? It's a question Scott Morrison recently answered, even though he wasn't asked it.
Now, where that champion is in the Labor Party, in the Labor Greens alliance, what is Adam Bant going to argue for rural and regional Australia, is he? And the Deputy Treasurer under a Shorten government will be Adam Bant. What role Rob Oakeshott will have and what role Tony Windsor will have is anybody's guess. I mean, I don't know who'll be driving that caravan.
So, Scott has no idea at all. What do you think at home?
Never mind that. Why doesn't Scott Morrison stop impersonating me? You ask him a question and before he's even had time to think of an answer, he's off on some insane rant. Labor's black hole. Labor's declaring war. Labor's in bed with the Greens. Adam Bant's going to be Deputy Prime Minister. Pauline Hanson's going to be Treasurer. Darren Hinch will be Minister for Foreign Affairs. James Mathison will be Minister for Defence. Barnaby Joyce will be Minister for Agriculture. Oh, shit, that's actually happened. Labor's making promises with money that isn't there and he's made sure isn't there by producing another deficit. When he was Immigration Minister, he said he was taking the sugar off the table for people smugglers. And now as Treasurer, he's taken the bloody table as well.
Casper, what are you doing in my house?
Yes, interesting. Any response to those comments, ScoMo?
Well, I'm not going to commentate on a commentator commentating on commentators.
Fair enough too. Eats into the time you need to imagine out aloud what Labor may or may not do. Time now, though, for the rest of the media to cast its eye on its own eye as it watches itself. Well, people have been very critical this last week of Katter's Australian Party's Bob Katter, specifically his latest election advertisement. Now, who's seen it? Everybody, great. Now, a lot of people are saying it's in bad taste, but I'm here to tell you it's actually pretty damn good. And I know about ads because I was in this one. Let me talk you through Bob's ad, though, if I may. OK, we start off with our two antagonists whose clothing is in homage to political cartooning, and that identifies them as coming from Labor and the Coalition. They're erecting a sign which enrages the central character, Bob Katter, played a little unconvincingly by Bob Katter. But Katter devises an elegant solution ensuring that no foreign multinationals will be able to buy Australian assets. But in the second act, in the twist none of us saw coming, the authors put the sign back up, but Bob ingeniously thwarts their plan again, Roadrunner style, by completely rewriting the sign, careful to match the original font to give it the opposite meaning. In the third act, there's a sudden escalation and a reaction to the sign and in a denouement that's more likely to be found in the work of Sam Peckinpah or Eli Roth. Katter's unpredictable character goes from altering the sign with a text to murdering its authors, leaving the country safe in the hands of a trigger-happy homicidal maniac. It's daring, it's bleak, it's a triumph, and I hear it's opening the Cannes Film Festival this year. Excuse me. Oh. Hello? Oh, yes, all right. I I'm sorry, it's opening the Cairns Film Festival. Oh, and while we're here, we should just have a look at the very end of the ad. And if we could just freeze on that there, if only to stop that guitar playing. It says that Australia is not for sale, and I'm just wondering whether the quotation marks around "not" mean that Australia, in fact, is for sale. It is possible, given that they've also put them around the hour in our homeland, thus suggesting that Australia is someone else's homeland. Finally, maybe, a newish attack ad linking the Greens with Labor has been getting a lot of airplay lately and quite a few hits online. It's been released by a hot new music artist you may have heard of called DJ ScoMo.
It's hard hitting, but it's there for all to see.
I'll say, and the message is obvious, isn't it? Techno music in a political ad is a terrible idea. The video has a catchy title, though, The Greening of Labor from Within. For voters, though, the response is more the browning of underpants from within. And Labor's response, well, they could have reminded everybody that the WA National Party candidate Cato Muir has stood for the Greens in every state and federal election since 2004, is being preferenced first by the Liberal Party and is expected to win one of the two final seats in WA. But no, Labor were above the moral high ground they often find themselves beached upon. Instead, they resorted to that highest form of wit, the zinger, which struck its target squarely in the pants, bursting its pompous bottom.
Scott Morrison should spend more time on his day job as treasurer than his night job as amateur YouTube video producer.
But like Bill's zinger, the National Broadband Network is something that most of us haven't got. Labor says the government's NBN will be painfully slow because the old copper network will effectively become constipated with information. Hence the need for more fibre in our broadband to keep it moving. But our former Mr. Broadband, seen here personally out there attaching the NBN cables to our nodes, downs tools, takes off his gloves and points the finger squarely at Labor.
They hopelessly mismanaged the project.
And he's come up with his own Bill Shorten-esque put-down for typical Labor's big-spending approach. Let's see how it registers on the old zingerometer.
Another example today of shortonomics, very short on economics.
Interesting, interesting. You see, if it was me doing the joke, I'd be less partisan, because if shortonomics is short on economics, then Morrisonomics must be economics by these people. Now, when I want to know which electorates are the most left-leaning and right-leaning in this country, I turn to Vote Compass. Because then I I know that the opposite of what Vote Compass tells me is the right answer. The Queensland seat of Maranoa is actually the most right-leaning and Batman the most left-leaning. Now, there are two possible explanations for this inexcusable blunder. A magnet has got too close to the Vote Compass. Maybe this insider's chick magnet. Or it's a direct result of the closure of the ABC fact-check unit. And I suspect the latter, given this recent ABC News story.
Prime Minister Darren Hinch and his wife Scarlett Johansson have held a press conference on the German island of Sudan to announce Ms Johansson is expecting her 9th child with Mr Hinch, the former cosmonaut and lead singer of Take That. Ms Johansson said her plans for an ABBA reunion tour would now be put on hold with the blessing of fellow band members Eric, Keith and Janet. Windy and 275 degrees in Sydney tomorrow.
He led this country by the scruff of the neck until we begged for more.
Yes. He left a great legacy behind him, particularly after he died. I remember his funeral. Dame Patty had asked me to dance a Highland reel with her during the middle of the service. I said, no, I didn't think that was appropriate. She was inconsolable, of course, but I explained to her that I'd pulled a muscle genuflecting repeatedly before Sir Robert's casket that afternoon. Anyway, she staggered off in search of drugs and what she described as a quick one with Al Grasby. And I don't blame her, really, you know. It was 1978 and Al was a very attractive man. We were all, I guess, rebelling against something or other and exploring our sexuality. It's probably why I got into politics in the first place. Yeah. She was a very attractive woman for an octogenarian.
Welcome back. Well, it's perfectly natural in the lead up to an election to ask the question, who is going to be our next Prime Minister? It's even become quite normal to ask that question 6 months after an election. In this country, being a Prime Minister is like one's gender, fluid and liable to change depending on the result of polling. But who are the up-and-comers on the back benches who should be groomed or at least shampooed and dewormed for the nation's top job? Well, it's hardly the sort of question for a cheap comedy show, which is fortunate because Chase is not on until 9:03, and we've gone to the trouble of putting together this new segment called
Shaun Micallefs, Kingmaker.
So, who should we look out for on the back bench? Apart from him, obviously. Well, how about the Honourable Bert Van Manen? This former Family First, now Liberal National Party member for Ford combines the charisma of Luke McGregor with the political nous of Attila the Hun. Whether he's asking Dorothy Dixers in an awestruck Parliament or doing Zoot reviews for Woolworths, he's a man with something to say.
Enjoy the fun. There'll be a great range of opening specials.
He's also highly media savvy, which is essential for a future leader. Check out whatever this is from his Facebook page. It makes Triumph of the World look like a cat video. The only kink in the armour of this political Iron Man is his consistency. Look at this clip of Bert very carefully.
What a pleasure it has been to catch up with so many residents in my electorate recently.
That's enough. That's enough. You can only stare into the sun for so long. Now compare that with this.
Hi, I'm back in Canberra this week.
Now you see what I mean about consistency? Have a look again. This is outside the office, inside the office. Outside the office, inside the office, outside the office. It's the hair, tie, lapel, mic, shirt, everything's exactly the same. Still, I'm quibbling. Mark my words, Bert Van Manen will be our next Prime Minister at either the next election or the next leadership spill, whichever comes first. And speaking of first, who better to give advice to our novice party leaders as they enter the last stretch of their first campaign than someone who's seen it all before? See my glasses?
Now, Bill, we're in the final weeks of another election.
Bugger Fritz?
No, thank you. How do you think this one will compare to all the others that you've seen?
Well, it'll be very different, I think. Be very, very different. Yes, I remember voting for Ben Chifley in 1973.
He died in 1951.
Well, he still would have made a more effective Prime Minister than Gough Whitlam.
You didn't like Gough?
Could not stand him.
It's unusual to hear that on the ABC.
I was glad when he disappeared off Cheviot Beach. Spirited away, they say, by a Chinese midget, or little person, I think they like to be called today.
I think you're thinking of Harold Holt.
Bloody dwarves. What?
You're thinking of Harold Holt.
Oh, yes, Harold and I were great pals. He would often bring his lady friends around here of an afternoon. He was a man's man. Well, he could scarcely have sex behind his wife's back in his own home now, could he? And it would be unseemly to use the Prime Ministerial office for such purposes. He'd have to make himself scarce, though. Gwen came back early from bowls, though. She was a dwarf.
But Chifley was your favourite.
Oh, yes, I voted for Chifley in every election since the war, except 1945.
The year he won?
Yes. I mean, it's very easy to be on the winning side, Francis. It's the lost causes that are worth fighting for, the long shots. That's why I'll very, very soon be out there on the hustings campaigning for the member for Warringah.
Tony Abbott?
Yes, Tony Abbott. A humble backbencher, a man who receives almost no support from his party. That rare breed of politician who doesn't know the meaning of the word ousted.
Do you think that Nicky Savis's book will hurt his chances at all?
I refuse to read that litany of lies and scurrilous gossip. I got the audio book instead. I put page 23 on repeat.
Is that the bit where Joe Hockey falls through the marble coffee table?
Yeah, but if it's scurrilous gossip you want, I hear that Peter Credlin has been sleeping with the former director of the Liberal Party, Brian Loughnane.
Yes, but she's married to him.
Yes, still though. Cool. Come with me, Francis. There's something I'd like to show you. Yes, well, I have my bloody glasses. Francis, if you wouldn't mind holding this for me for a moment, please. Yes, here we go. There we go. Now, I got that off Gumtree from Tony himself. 2 out of 5 gum leaf ratings. Yes, he says it's perfect for throwing through the front window of Kirribilli House. And if you look here, that fracture there, Joe Hockey's coccyx. Yeah. Well, not coming up because Chase's election desk wants to start on time.
Mad as Hell's Meat Boy interviews Gerard Henderson about the ABC using footage of him out of context.
They're very interesting.
And Shaun not happy with bulge in trousers.
I need to get a pair of socks.
And finally, our political leaders have also been keen to show off their multicultural credentials this last week. As you can see, the preferred Prime Minister there sharing a meal with Malcolm Turnbull. In fact, all the major parties have been pimping themselves to the migrant communities, with both Labor and the Coalition producing election material in languages that they can't speak themselves, and Greens leader Richard Di Natale reminding us
people from this community have helped forge the nation that we enjoy today.
And if these communities have forged this nation, it's a brilliant forgery. I mean, it's fooled everybody. Goodbye.
Jive, baby.
Look at her.